Hello, I'm Kim and welcome to my studio. Today's tutorial is a beautiful cherry blossom scene perfect for the springtime. I'll take things slow and show you step by step how you can recreate this painting. So grab your paints and let's get started. Okay, to start I'm going to take this light blue color here, tropical blue, and I'm just going to add it to the very bottom of the painting here, just a few dots. And all the paint I'm going to show you here I got from the dollar store, so you can get equivalent craft paint from any department store or dollar store. This is a bit of a darker blue, Copenhagen blue. And I'm going to add 6 dots of this one here, just directly to the canvas. And the reason we're adding it to the canvas is just to skip a step here, rather than putting it on the palette and then having to move it right over the canvas immediately. This is just us being efficient. And then the last color here is black. So because this is craft paint, it's pretty watery, so I'm trying not to put too much on. Put it at the top here. And this is inexpensive paint, but you don't need expensive paint to make beautiful art. So I'm gonna use the biggest brush here, big loose brush, and I'm actually gonna start at the bottom here with the lightest paint. So I'm just gonna paint this across the bottom, making sure I'm getting my corners as well. And just a nice even coat. And then once I have this coated, I'm gonna start moving up and pick up some of that blue color. And you can take this part nice and slow, just make sure you're going all the way to the edge. Take your time with this part, because the paint is very watery, and so you can just go back and forth and just blend it all together. So I'm gonna go up and grab even the darker blue here. And if it goes over the edges a little bit, that's okay. We can paint those edges black or another color of your choice at the end if you choose to. I'm just gonna go back and forth here a little bit. This is gonna be the backdrop, our night sky, and so ultimately we want to get up to this black color here. I just didn't want to start with it because I didn't want our canvas to be too dark. So that's why I started with the lightest blue, because it's easier to blend from lightest color to darkest color than it is to blend from the darkest color, because as you notice now, the black will take over a lot of the canvas here, and it's a lot darker than those light blues we had. So just taking my time here. This is a little bit therapeutic, and we're gonna just go all the way down and make sure it's all covered. And this part is very forgiving. If you take a look at this later and you think, oh, it's too dark, it's too light, you can always dollop a little bit more of the paint on and just go back and forth again to change the colors a little bit. So this part doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to paint over top of it. This is just a nice gradient background that we're going to have here. So once you're happy with this, do some final brush strokes here. Okay, once you're happy with this, you can put away the big brush there, and we're going to get some white paint here. And I am going to put this on my palette. I'm going to put quite a bit of generous amount here, just because we're going to come back and use some of this later. And then I'm going to take a brush that's about a medium-sized brush here, another soft brush, and I'm actually just going to dip it in water just to make it a little bit wet before I go in at the edge of the paint here. And the goal here is to sprinkle some stars on the canvas. And so I want to make sure my brush has a little bit of water in it, but not too much, or else it's going to splatter. So it's better to be more on the dry side here. So if it's too dry, nothing will come off. So I'm just going to take my finger and just push the brush down in a flicking motion. And I'm just going to add little stars. And this is a little bit dry, so I'm just going to add a little bit more water, get a little bit more paint, and then I'm going to go again. And that's perfect. You'll see the little sprinkles here. The way you'll know it's too wet is if you start getting these like dollops, like these splatters of paint. You don't want that. And if it's too dry, nothing will come off at all, as you saw in the beginning with what happened to me. And so again, this is the backdrop, doesn't have to be perfect. If you do get any dollops, kind of like this little one I got here, you can always make them into shooting stars later. Or cover them up with some of the foreground as well. So you don't need to be too hard on yourself if you decide you don't like that. So I'm just gonna kind of do this to my heart's content. I'm gonna try to just have like an even amount, going for some small stars and some bigger stars here, just to add some visual interest, and concentrating more towards like the top of the canvas here where it's a little bit darker, and I want to add some brightness back in. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. So I'm gonna leave that brush now. And I'm gonna move on to the hill at the bottom of the canvas here. And so for that, I'm gonna get my black again. And I'm gonna add a little bit of black down here for the hill. And I'm also gonna add a little bit to my canvas here, just because we'll need some for the grass that we want to do. So I'm just gonna rinse off that medium brush that we used for the stars. And then I'm going to spread out this here. And so I'm just gonna start slow, make sure you cover the base here first, and then slowly work up into a bit of the hill shape I want. So I'm just gonna extend a little bit and even everything out. And then for the grass, I'm actually going to switch up my brushes here. So I'm just gonna put this one down. And I have here more of this like rough kind of brush that's more bristly. And I love these brushes because they give you a really cool effect for grass. So I'm just gonna kind of like dab into the side here of my paint. And then I'm just going to scratch up a little bit to show this like texture for grass. And it's gonna peek through to some of the blue at the back, but I actually don't mind that because it kind of makes the grass a little bit more interesting and three-dimensional. It's not just all black here at the bottom. And I'm not just gonna do the top, I'm also gonna extend down a little bit into the black beneath, just to create more visual interest of this hill here and give it kind of more of like a 3D properties. It's kind of like reflecting a little bit of the sky. So I'm not using too much paint here, just a little bit. I'm just going over, making sure that there's a little bit of like texture and interesting detail to this bottom part here. Okay, so once I'm happy with that, I'm going to get a much smaller brush. I'm thinking something around this size here. And we're gonna dip back into this black and we're gonna make the outline of the tree now. So I'm going to make most of the tree. I can use the example here. So I'm going to paint most of the tree here without going too far into all of the branches or anything like that. And so what I'm gonna do is just start here, and I'm gonna start much thinner because it's always easier to add paint than it is to take away paint. So I can start with like just a basic outline, and then I think I'm gonna like swoop over kind of this way and over up here. And most of this is gonna be covered by petals anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfect. I just wanna kind of give an outline which will guide where I wanna start putting the floral bits, so some of the cherry blossoms. And so I think I like the idea of having the tree extend much more higher on this side and then a little bit lower on this side, just because I want to frame, we're gonna put the moon here and I want to frame it nicely with those cherry blossoms. It looks so pretty when the cherry blossoms are contrasted against the moon. Okay, so I have a rough outline. I'm just gonna thicken up the lines a little bit here. And maybe a little bit of the branch branches here. Again, a lot of this will be covered, but it's good to have a bit peeking through as well, just to make your tree look a little bit more three-dimensional. And then I'm just gonna wipe off this brush here, and I'm gonna pick up a little bit of the white. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of highlight to the one side here. And so the side that's facing the moon, I want to show a little bit of that reflection of the moon, just to make this tree look a little bit more three-dimensional. Just gonna add that. So I'm adding it to the branches that are facing towards the moon. If you imagine the moon will be right here, we're just going to highlight the side that will be facing the moon. And if you make a mistake here, you can always add a little bit more black and just go over it. But this part doesn't have to be perfect. See, and it's going to be covered up. Okay, so that's as far as I want to go for now. We are going to wait for this to dry, and then we're going to do the moon and the cherry blossoms, just because if I were to do this on the wet paint, it would pick up some of that darker paint beneath and dull the colors. So I'm just going to dry this quickly, and then we'll start on the moon. Okay, so now my painting is dry, and so the first thing I want to do is tackle the moon. So I'm actually going to add a little bit of this tropical blue, this light blue we started with here, just so I can add a bit more color and texture to the moon area. So I'm going to get that medium-sized brush we were using earlier for the hill, this one here. And I'm gonna pick up some white paint, and I'm gonna start, oops, I put water here. Then I'm gonna start building out my moon. So for the moon, obviously we wanna make it mostly circular, if that's what you wanna do, the full moon. And so it's easier to start small and then build out from there, especially if you want to maintain that circular shape. Because it's easy to go out too far on one of the edges, and then you keep correcting, and then before you know it, you have a gigantic moon. It's definitely happened to me before, and so that's why I mention it, so you don't run into that same pitfall. And so I'm just gonna keep expanding and then go back to make sure it's circular, and expanding, go back to make sure it's circular. Take your time with this. It's not a race. You can slow down the video if you need to and really get this just right. And I'm gonna over exaggerate the size just a little bit because I want some of it to be covered by the cherry blossoms. And it's okay if you paint over some of your branches. We can add those on later. This is about the size I want, I think, and so I'm just going to carefully try to make sure that it's all pretty much circular. Again, you don't need to get out a ruler or anything like that. And then now that I've have this white base, I'm gonna add a little bit of blue in here just to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm kind of just adding it at random, just to create some different spots, and then I'll dip back in the white, add some white, just because I don't want it to all be one uniform white color. And I'm actually gonna even darken this up a little bit, just to make it look really cool. And I'm gonna make sure I'm going a little bit to the edges here too. All right, so I like that. You can stop whenever you want to. So I'm gonna leave this as is. And then we're going to progress on to the last part, the actual cherry blossoms. And so I'm gonna use 3 different colors for this, and I'm gonna start with this dark purple color, African Violet. And I'm gonna add this right to the palette here. So we're gonna build up the cherry blossoms in a few stages, starting with the darkest color first. I'm just gonna get my smallest brush here, just a small soft brush, wet it a little bit, and then I'm gonna pick up some of this purple color and I'm gonna start adding it towards the middle of the tree and the bottom of the branches here. And the reason why I want to concentrate this color there is because this is the darkest color we're going to be using as our base. And so we want to make sure we're concentrating this color towards the center of the tree here, where the tree will be the thickest, as well as towards the bottom of the branches where the moon isn't shining, and so it's going to be darker. And so that's what I'm just doing here, extending up here and there. And I'm kind of also concentrating it more towards the middle of the tree. I'm not really taking it too far up the branches. And then while I'm doing this, I'm actually also going to add a few petals down here, just because I want to show that some of them have dropped off the tree. Okay, that looks good for now. I can always come back later. And then I'm gonna add this pink color, this bright pink tutti frutti color. It looks neon, it's not neon though. It's just like a very bright, pretty pink color. Add a generous amount here. Rinsing off my brush, and then I'm gonna use that same brush and paint on the pinky color. And I'm holding the brush pretty far back for this, just because you don't need to be very precise. This isn't like an exact science. We're just trying to like lightly suggest where the branches are. And so I'm gonna build off of where I left off with this purple color and continue up the branches. Just trying to suggest where each branch would be, and I'm kind of following along roughly with the black guidelines I gave myself earlier as well. And this color is also more towards the top of each branch, just because it's going to get brighter the higher we go up on the tree, and also the farther along we go along the branches. This is not to say I'm not going to add a few spots here to the middle. I just want to really highlight and distinguish where each branch is going to be now. And I'm also, as you notice, there's no black here, but I'm just kind of like trying to suggest where a branch might go. And so I want to frame this moon nicely, and so I'm going to start building up my branches that way. And I want the tree to bend a little bit backwards over here as well. And don't forget to do, just a bit of water here, don't forget to do down in this area as well, some lower branches if you so choose. And as I finish up with the top colors here, I'm actually also going to add a few petals just slowly falling here, just because it looks really pretty, the effect of like some of the petals are coming loose under the moonlight and then gathering here at the base of the tree. I'm also going to add a few here and there, some smaller petals, but obviously if they were to fall naturally, most would gather around here, so I'm just going to concentrate most of the petal fall here, and then just a few out towards the sides of the painting. Okay, I'm going to get my white color here again, and we're going to move on to a lighter shade of pink. And so I'm going to add the white here nice and close to the pink, and so I can access it easily. And then I'm going to mix the two to create a more like a softer kind of bubblegummy pink color. And this is going to be the next color we use to build out our branches a little bit more. So I'm just going to keep mixing until I'm really happy with the color. Try to mix quite a bit if you can, just because it's difficult to start and then you have to go back and try to mix again, and then you might not get the exact same color you liked. So it's always better to have too much than it is too little. So I'm happy with this color, so I'm gonna start again. And again, I'm pushing this out even further now. Don't be afraid to go over top of some of the colors you've painted already, because it'll all start to like blend in a little bit together and give this really pretty like soft effect towards the petals. So I'm really concentrating this more towards the end of the branches here, especially around the moon, just because I love the way it looks when it frames the moon, and also just looks all bright and pretty around the moon here. And from time to time, you can also kind of just take a step back and look back at your painting. Because we are using these pink colors of the petals to suggest the outline of the tree, now is when you can really play with the shape of the tree. And so if you don't like where the tree is going, or you think it looks a little bit too symmetrical or not symmetrical enough, now is the time to take a look and really decide how you want the tree to look. Because you can always suggest branches where there were none before, and also just kind of fill out some of the areas you feel is really missing some color. So I'm gonna add some lower colors here too, just because I realize the area is a little bit lacking. And just also suggesting some soft colors in here. And I think I really want to just kind of build a branch off here as well, I think. No, we didn't add that in originally, but it's nice to have some other branches going on so it's not too symmetrical. And then same as the previous color, I'm gonna also add some falling petals here, and then also towards the base of the tree. A few scattered around. There. And I'm just gonna give my brush a quick rinse here, and then the final color we'll move on to for the petals is just the pure white here. And so this color will be for the farthest petals along the branches. I'm going to try to use this somewhat sparingly. And again, if it mixes with the other colors, that's completely fine. It'll just soften the effect a little bit, where you'll have some soft white pinks blending together. And this is just for the highlights of the tree. And so I'm really going to make sure it's only towards the very edges here, and then kind of taking it a little bit into the lightest pink colors we painted here below. I'm going to paint a little bit over the moon here just because I love the way it looks. And also the way all the colors, the three pinks kind of blend together, but then you can like see that they all stay a little bit apart as well, so you can distinguish there was a few different colors there. And it just adds more depth to your painting. It makes your tree look more 3D if you have a multitude of colors being built up like this. Gonna add a few of those petals down here below as well. But now is a good time to go back and see if you want to add any extra details in here. So for instance, I noticed that some of the brighter pink I used, the tutti frutti, it looks like it's a little bit washed out in some places. So I'm just gonna go ahead and touch it up a little bit, just because I want it to look as vibrant as it does towards like on the moon side here throughout the rest of the painting as well. So feel free to go back and just add in some extra details. Try not to get overly focused though, like this, the petals are supposed to be kind of like loose and less like intentional strokes. Like you want it to look a little bit like natural in terms of like they're not overly symmetrical or planned or anything. I'm just gonna add a little bit of that purple as well. And then the final step I'm gonna do here, now that I'm happy with everything else, is I'm just gonna get a little bit of the black color. And when I say a little bit, like truly a little bit, like I'm gonna run my brush here back and forth on both sides. And so I just have the tiniest amount of paint, and my paintbrush is also super thin. So it's like flattened on both sides into almost like a very flat shape here. And then I'm gonna use that to just add some extra little like strokes here that make it look like our branches are coming up and connecting some of the parts here where we added the petals in. Because we didn't take the branches all the way to the end, just want to add in the suggestion of branches here just to give us a little bit of peek through between those petals and suggest where the branches might have been. So I'm not putting the long branches everywhere. I'm just adding just a few here and there. And that's it. You've painted your very own cherry blossom and moon painting.
This was a fun scene to paint. I love the way the cherry blossoms look against the night sky. If you have any questions or suggestions for the next tutorial, then please feel free to drop them in the comments below. If you'd like to see more content like this, then feel free to subscribe to my channel where you'll get more step-by-step painting tutorials. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.